Hey, this is Dan Fierst with another episode of Employee Newsletter Tips. I thought I'd spend this time with you today talking about a very key question that many people have on their minds, but not too many people ask, and that is, why do you want to have a newsletter for your employees at all? Some people call the employee newsletter a company newsletter, and some people call it a wellness newsletter, and I've been known to write about these instruments and calling them health, wellness, and productivity newsletters. Because a newsletter is a instrument for not employees per se as the main customer of them, but actually the company. You see, employees are your company's most valuable resource. And because of that, and because of who they are, being at work and being paid to do a job, they are a captured audience. And you have an opportunity anytime you want to give information to employees. And you have to define how much you're going to give to them that they can absorb, that will also help develop them into all they can be. And employee wellness, productivity, stress management newsletters that also include information about your company can go a long ways to not only protecting your company's bottom line, but developing your employees, their skills, their abilities, and helping them be all they can be. But there are a few tricks that I want to tell you about that I've learned along the way that will help you do your employee newsletter effectively, so you get less stress on your part doing the newsletter in the first place, and also maximizing the impact of the newsletter so employees get the most benefit from it. Well, I've done newsletters for county governments, state governments, federal governments, nonprofit organizations, associations that I've been a member of, and I've written newsletters for hundreds of companies through the subscription service of Frontline Employee. Now, what I've discovered after doing newsletters for about 22 years with business and industry, and also internally with companies to about 30 years ago, is that the most powerful newsletter is a newsletter that is 2 pages, not 4. Now, you may be familiar with the newsletter structure that comes out quarterly, and that newsletter is structured into 4 pages. Very frequently, those articles are lengthy, feature-oriented, and here's what happens when employees get those newsletters. They open them up, and the first impression they have is that, wow, this is a lot to read. They start out with a negative thought in their head, and sure enough, what I've discovered is that most employees don't read 4-page newsletters, even if they come out 4 times a year or twice a year. It doesn't make any difference. They get about 2 pages through the newsletter, and then they put it down because they've been distracted by something else going on in the job, and they may never return. So 4-page newsletters are too infrequent a frequency to make the impact that you want them to make. And here's a little arithmetic for you. 2-page newsletters given to employees monthly are 50% more content than a quarterly newsletter of 4 pages. But the magic is that 2-page newsletters are more likely to be read by employees completely. And that's because the articles have to be shorter in order to make the newsletter useful. And what I recommend, and what I've discovered through a lot of practical experience, is that the best articles are about 75 words to about 250 words in length max. 4 articles, 2-sided, and that newsletter can be distributed on the internet with a PDF. It can be printed and put in a lunchroom area. It can be emailed to employees' homes. It can be sent home so family members see it. And by the way, I almost forgot to tell you, one of the most important things you can do in newsletters is put articles in there that pertain to the whole family, because employees don't leave their personal problems at the doorstep when they come to work. And things are going on at home that concern them, that are difficult and stressful. And so if you address articles in your newsletter that also hit family topics, you'll discover that your newsletter becomes very, very interesting. And employees will actually look forward to seeing that newsletter, and they will tell you if they don't get it. They'll actually become addicted to that 2-page newsletter. Now, I'm going to tell you one thing that's an interesting observation for me is that I've had many companies say, well, our employees have too much to read. Therefore, we don't want to distribute a newsletter, and because they're just too busy to read it, and we don't want to overburden them. This is false logic. What really happens is that employees look forward to getting the newsletter. It's what they want to read first, and they can read it quick and fast. If those articles are tight written, have copy in them that's no fluff, and that have effective titles that target specific personal issues that affect their lives. Now, when you come, the other part about newsletters and what makes them so effective and desirable in companies that understand the value of this tool is that you can have articles on conflict management, dealing with difficult people, being more creative in your job, getting to work on time, and you can also target articles that are issues in the employee culture. So if you have your thumb on what's going on around the organization, you'll very quickly start to come up with content ideas to address common issues that people are feeling and experiencing. It could be that you're having a layoff and you need tips on layoff stress. It could be that someone passed away and you're dealing with grief. It could be many other types of issues, but these productivity issues are key for every newsletter to contain, along with health, wellness, and stress tips. In almost every newsletter I write, I try to have an article related to stress and something useful, practical, simple, because these articles, when they're short and sweet, and have that kind of content in them, bullets, how to, what to do, what to say, how to say it. These kinds of articles are remembered by employees, and the information they discover is much more useful for them. Now, one of the more important things about newsletters is that if they're distributed on time and they're predictable, they will start to become a central point of communication for your organization, and they will take on a life all their own. And to get people to buy into your newsletter, what I suggest you do is have a naming contest and give a prize out to someone who comes up with the best name. And then all you need is a creative nameplate, your logo, and the title of that newsletter you've come up with to make something that's really meaningful. Now, many of you may have tried newsletters in the past, and have discovered that they flopped after a while. First they came out monthly, then you tried it bi-monthly, and then you tried quarterly, and then you had what we call in the newsletter business tri-monthly, which is a TRY. You actually try to do the newsletters, and they eventually just flop. So I talk with a lot of companies that want newsletters, that have had newsletters in the past, and I get a common complaint being, hey, yeah, we tried that once, but nobody could ever do it and keep up with it. And I know that's difficult, but in these episodes of newsletter tips, I'm going to show you how to do newsletters, how to write them effectively, how to make them easy on you. And so they'll come out on time, and you won't experience that stress. Because if you start doing your own newsletter, now I'll end on this point. If you start doing your own newsletter, here's the cardinal sin. The cardinal sin that will cause you to hate your job is when you feel as an obligated, dedicated employee that you can't do the newsletter at work because you're too busy doing other things, and you start taking the newsletter home. At that point in time, it starts interfering with your life, and you start hating it. You start hating your job, and you may start thinking about quitting. So do not break that rule. That is your cardinal rule. So I'll stop there. And hey, if you don't mind, if you could like this video, if you found something useful in it, or give me a comment at the bottom, I'd really appreciate it. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon about newsletter tips. And listen, the next time I'm going to talk about the 12 different content areas that you should consider having in your employee newsletter.